I was born and raised a do-it-yourselfer. Do everything yourself. I've always had projects to do. Plenty of projects to do for myself. Whether it's renovating a bathroom, a kitchen, a basement, building on a deck, fixing a lawnmower, or putting new doors on the shed at church. Whatever it is, I'm always doing something. I'm a do-it-yourselfer. I was born and raised that way. My dad was definitely a do-it-yourselfer. He was a do-it-yourselfer because he was interested in doing things and learning how things worked. He liked to tear things apart and repair them and put them back together. That was just part of who my dad was. But he was also a do-it-yourselfer because he was never very wealthy. And so he couldn't afford to call somebody to come and fix the plumbing or the electricity or whatever else needed done in the house. And so Dad just fixed it. I'll never forget the time when I came home, been living away from home for a while, and I opened up the refrigerator. And I looked inside the refrigerator door, and there were eight metal brackets holding the door together. Holding the door together. My mother hated that refrigerator, as you can imagine, but my dad said, it works, doesn't it? Because my dad was a do-it-yourselfer. So he raised me and my brothers to be do-it-yourselfers, to do our own things, take care of our own stuff. And these days, you can do anything yourself, everything yourself. All you have to have is access to YouTube, and you can find out how to fix, repair, do anything. And this stretches into every area of our life. This week, I visited the doctor for some things I had going on. And one of the things I had going on, a little personal information, I had a little sciatic pain, something going on in my hip. I've been doing one of those DIY projects at home, and I think it's aggravated something back here, and I'm 49 and whatever else. But so something was going on, and so I'm talking to her about that, and she says, do these stretches. And she shows me real quick, she says, just look it up on YouTube. And I thought, wow, you go to the doctor, and the doctor says, just go do it yourself. Look it up on YouTube. That's a change, isn't it? Do it yourself is definitely one of those mentalities, and I may be raising a couple of do-it-yourselfers myself because they have to help me do projects all the time at home. We'll see what they end up doing in their life. But Americans kind of pride ourselves on being do-it-yourselfers, don't we? Like, we did it our way, we made it here all on our own, we worked hard, and we got where we wanted to be, and we did it ourselves kind of thing. It's the myth in our culture of rugged individualism, that we strike out like frontier persons and build our own little tiny kingdoms around us. And the truth is, we never do anything on our own. We don't do anything ourselves. Somebody taught us, the YouTube video maybe, or a teacher or a parent or a mentor. Somebody built the road that we drove on to go to the home improvement store to get the project things that we needed to build it, or somebody built the school that educated us, that made us be whatever we were in our life to earn our living. Somebody put the sewer systems in. Somebody surveyed the ground to figure out the drainage many, many years ago so that we could have what we have and what we do. So the truth is, we're not Lone Rangers anymore. And even the Lone Ranger had a sidekick. Wasn't completely on his own. We're not independent, we're interdependent. And now we live in a world that is more global than ever before. So not only are we not independent in our own little land that we want to think is just ours, but we're dependent upon everything that happens in the world. Our economy, for instance, is impacted. If that's not true this past week, then what is? If that doesn't tell you that, something like the coronavirus can infect our investments, can infect our trade, can infect what we're going to be able to buy, and all those things are interconnected now. And we are interdependent upon the entire global system. That's the world we live in. Our health is impacted by that, our health care and how we do that. And our environment is certainly impacted globally and interdependently as well. We're looking at news coming out this week that Antarctica has been the warmest it's been in recorded history. And more ice is melted off of there. That means ocean levels rising. It means all kinds of impact on our globe. and we all are interdependent in what happens in the environment around us. Well, the story that Kelly read for us today of the temptation of Jesus is the classic story that the lectionary puts out. That's that list of readings for the church year for the first Sunday of Lent. Every first Sunday of Lent, we get the story of the temptation of Jesus from one of the Gospels. It varies a little bit per Gospel. Some orders change and some things like that. But the story is basically generically the same. Jesus, Son of God, is tempted in a wilderness journey, during a wilderness journey. Now in Matthew's version, Jesus has been out in the wilderness. He's been fasting and he's been praying and he's starving. He's been doing this for about 40 days. 40 days of Lent, 40 days, 40 years in the wilderness by the people of the Exodus. You see the connections there maybe in the stories? So Jesus has been in the wilderness for 40 days. He's been fasting and praying. And he's tempted to become a DIYer, a do-it-yourselfer. He's tempted to become a do-it-yourselfer. He's starving, and the accuser, the tempter, the Satan, whatever you want to call it, there's many different versions of the story, says, hey, you're starving. There's some stones. Turn them to bread. You won't be starving anymore. Do it yourself, Jesus. And Jesus says, doesn't live by bread alone, right? Doesn't live by bread alone. And then, so make some food for yourself. You won't be starving anymore. And then take it to the pinnacle of the temple. Throw yourself off. Call on God's angels. Right? You don't need a parachute. Do it yourself, Jesus. Right? Don't tempt God, Jesus says. And then taking and showing all the kingdoms, the earthly kingdoms of the world. You can have all of this. You can be the ultimate do-it-yourselfer. Just take it, Jesus. It's all yours for the taking. Just do it, Jesus. It's all yours. Don't put the Lord to the test. Don't tempt, right? God is God. Jesus is tempted to be all and do all. In short, to be like God. To be like God. And to take advantage of being like God. How'd that work out for Adam and Eve in the garden story? Did that go pretty well for them? I don't recall. I don't think it was very good, was it? They kind of got banished, and there was all kinds of things that happened when they tried to be like God and take advantage of that in that story. Paul says of Jesus in Philippians that being found like God, didn't take advantage of that, but emptied himself, humbled himself, became obedient even to death on a cross. Jesus, you are like God. Act like it. Do it. Do it yourself. Jesus. That's the temptation that's happening right there in the wilderness. Jesus is tempted to be all, to do all, but resist that temptation. And in the resistance says nothing is possible without God, and our surrender, our dependence upon God as source of our life, source of all life, as sustainer of our very being, as Redeemer and Savior and giver of eternal life. But with God, everything is possible. Without God, nothing is truly possible. So that's the story that begins the journey of Lent for Christians around the world today. As they begin this 40-day journey of looking at self and trying to prepare for that time when Jesus is on the cross, and that time when Jesus is in the tomb, and that time when Jesus rises to newness of life and grants us newness of life in the resurrection of Easter. The temptation, though, to do it yourself, to be all and do all, runs wild in our midst, and even impacts things like ministry. There are many temptations in ministry. Many temptations. Temptations that have to do with power, right? I've got your attention right now for about 15 minutes this morning. That's power. That's power. You're paying attention. Some of you are napping. It's okay. I'm used to that. But I've got your attention for these few minutes, and it's power. Because I have the power of persuasion and influence, right? It can become manipulative, and unfortunately does in too many cases. Manipulative in so many ways. Manipulating people's emotions. Playing on when they're vulnerable. All right? Lots of ministers have done that over the years, unfortunately. They've played on those emotions when people are vulnerable and got them to give money they would have never given, got them to do things they may never have decided to do, but there's power in ministry, and there's temptation with that power. There's power to do it all yourself, to be all and do all the time. All the time. Every waking day. In ministry, when you wake up every day, you think there's something I have to do for the church today. Every day. Not just Monday through Friday, because the weekends you work too. You get up and you think every day there's something I got to do for the church. Somebody may call me today. Somebody may need me today. There's a prayer I need to say. There's something I have to do for the church. And then there's the list. The list that never, ever ends. You check off this box. It's called Write Sermon. Okay? You check it off, and you get down, you write out, you check off, put the deposits in, you check off, prayed with Mary, you check off, prayed with Judy, you check off, listened to Fred, you check off, and then all of a sudden, it says Write Sermon. Again. And then it says pray with Mary, and it just keeps going. It never ends. It never ends. So the temptation is to do it all yourself. Some people call it the Messiah complex in ministry. That I was called to save these people, to save all people. I'm following Jesus the best I can, so I'm going to save everybody. Right? Some wise mentors of mine helped me see a long time ago that that wasn't my job. And I'm so grateful to them. That my job wasn't to save everybody. That's God's job. God does that through the Spirit. Oh, I might get used here and there. I might be a tool in God's toolbox. But I'm just one tool. Just one. There's a whole lot of tools in that toolbox. And they're not all ordained ministers. Some are elders, and some are deacons, and some are trustees, and some are board moderators, and treasurers, and secretaries, and financial secretaries, and some are Sunday school teachers, and some are just loving people who care for one another and take a meal to somebody who needs it at the right time. Hold a hand, pray, and listen to the same story they've been told over and over and over again. All of us, together in that same toolbox, doing the same thing, acting out God's salvation right here in our midst. I'm so grateful that some taught me that many, many years ago. That I don't have to be all, do all in all things. But the temptation is still there. And that temptation can lead to burnout, right? People have said to me over the years, because I'm a pretty busy guy. I like to stay busy. You can ask my family about this. I don't sit down very long. I just can't stand sitting down. And plus, like my dad, whenever I sit down, that's what happens to me. So I don't sit down very much. I'm a busy guy. And that's just who I am. And that's all right. I like who I am. It's good. I think God's okay with it too. But some people have said, you're burning your candle at both ends, buddy. Yeah, sometimes it feels like it too. That candle's lit on both sides. Maybe you've been in that place as well. In whatever work or life situation you've been in, you're burning that candle a lot and feel like you're going to burn out. But what happens in ministry a lot is people do get burned out. Thousands of ministers every year walk away from ministry in our country because they get burned out. They're used up. They're tired. They're exhausted beyond recovery. And so they walk away. Some people do that. They move on to something else because the demands of ministry have burned them out. But also their lack of balance in their life has burned them out. Now, hear me when I say the demands of ministry are great, but so are the demands on other people's work and their lives. Not saying that the demands of ministry are just the worst in the world and the hardest in the world. Sometimes they're tough because they're emotional and they're physical and they go on, and like I said, that list never, ever ends. And it keeps going, and it keeps going. And now, with new technologies, there was an article in the Daily Journal a week or so ago. It was on the back of the thing. Maybe you saw it. Pastors need help too, or clergy need help too. And it had clergy from all different religions and talking about the pressures that are on them in this day and age when clergy are the least respected profession in all of the world now. Used to be we were on the top, now we're on the bottom. Thank you, television preachers who have swindled people out of everything. Thank you, priests who have abused their own people. Thank you to all those people who made that road possible for us. But now, being there and not being more respected in your profession, etc., you're on call, not 24/7. That's an old cliche. There's more hours than 24 in a day. You just don't know yet. You haven't found out. And it's because of this stuff called social media and these things, because these reach you wherever you are. You walk into the bathroom, beep, beep, somebody's texting you, right? Driving down the road, bzz, 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 it's buzzing, okay, I'll get to it, right? The minute you curl up in bed, bzz, 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 I gotta look at it. Oh, okay, I'll pray for you tomorrow, right? 3 o'clock in the morning, surely this isn't going to bother him. He'll wake up and see it. No, 3 o'clock in the morning, when this phone lights up beside me, what's up? Who's that? Oh, okay, I'll get back to you tomorrow, right? There are more hours in the day than 24 these days. So the pressures are great, and thousands of ministers burn out and leave ministry every year. And many others develop health issues along the way. Blood pressure, AC, ones that are out of the whack, all kinds of things that happen in clergy. Now, why am I telling you all this? Because there's a problem of temptation in ministry to do it all yourself. And that temptation has led to thousands of ministers being divorced, even though they're preaching about healthy relationships on Sunday. It's leading to a climbing suicide rate among ministers in our country who just can't do it anymore, who don't measure up to their own expectations, and perhaps the expectations of their congregations some days. Well, all of this has been developing and becoming more and more known in circles around us through media and other things. And one of the things that has been happening over the years is the Eli Lilly Foundation over in Indianapolis has been studying healthy congregations and healthy clergy. And as they've done that study over the past couple decades, one of the things that they've noticed is there are some root causes to burnout in clergy. Right? And there are some ways to fix it and some things to do to prevent that burnout, to prevent that temptation of doing it all, being all and doing all from happening. One pastor recently got the message about this. He's a young man, 2 years younger than myself. He's been in ministry the same length of time as I have. He serves a congregation in Washington, D.C. So Reverend Dr. Howard Wesley, he's the pastor of Alfred Street Baptist Church in Washington, D.C. And people were surprised that a pastor whose church is growing, whose church is doing great things, is going on sabbatical, taking a period of rest and renewal and refreshment. That he's tired, and then he felt distant from God. There are a lot of temptations in ministry, and one of those is to be all, do all, and in the being all and doing all, you feel like you're doing what you need to do to connect with God, and sometimes you're more disconnected than ever because it's work every day, meeting the list, checking off items, it's work. Yes, it's emotional work. Yes, sometimes it's rewarding work. Sometimes it feels amazing. And oftentimes it's draining. And it drains your soul. And as your soul gets drained, you do feel like you're further and further from God, even as you're trying to help people get closer to God. Eli Lilly Foundation that I mentioned before that clip did a long study on the health of congregations and ministry, and they recommended that congregations institute policies for sabbatical leaves for their pastors. That would lead to longer tenures with their pastors. The average tenure in the life of congregations of pastors back when I came to you was just over 3 years that most pastors stayed in a congregation. 3 years. And they moved on. Not because they got a better offer, because in 3 years they were already starting to feel the effects of burnout. Or the congregation had issues of health, and the pastor wasn't able to do anything with that. 3 years. 3 years. Denominations, including our denomination, recommends that churches offer their pastors a sabbatical leave of rest and renewal every 5 to 7 years. They put those policies in place. Our region recommends that for our congregations. In fact, our regional pastor, the Reverend Dr. Teresa Bouye Parker, started her sabbatical as regional minister for 90 days on February the 18th of last month. And she's studying and getting a new perspective is the theme of her sabbatical. Well, this morning I want to share with you that I'm going to resist the temptation to be all, do all, and do it myself. And I'm going on sabbatical. I'm going on sabbatical. The board of the congregation of Central Christian Church granted me a sabbatical leave starting right after Easter of 45 days. 45 days that I can rest and renew and refocus and get ready for what comes after that. Because just like Pastor Wesley, I'm excited about this job. I'm excited about this call, and I'm excited about what's to come. The temptation is, don't stop. The temptation is, don't be still. Don't take time to refresh and refocus. Just keep pushing forward and do it, because that's what I've done all my life. Just get it done. I've been doing this for 30 years this coming September. And just like Pastor Wesley, 50 is coming. And there are some things I wouldn't mind leaving in my 40s. The time is right. The time is right for me, and the time is right for our congregation. Why is the time right for our congregation? Because we are healthier than at any time in my 9-year tenure with you. 9-year tenure. Which, by the way, is the 4th longest tenure of any pastor ever to serve Central Christian Church in our 127-year history. 9 years. Not 20. There is 1 or 2. But 9 years. My tenure here in this building is the longest in this building of any pastor who served in this building. Now, Reverend Dietrich served at Oak Street for lots of years before this building. I know, because he baptized me over there, and I'm blessed to have been one of his candidates for baptism. The time is right. The time is right because we're in a good place. The time is right because we have a commissioned minister right in our midst who can help us through this time. Reverend Kelly Youngblood, who's a fully commissioned minister of the Christian Church Disciples of Christ, meaning she has every right and privilege of any minister and has the authority to preside at any function of the office of ministry. That's what she has. That's what our church, our wider church, and us, when we commissioned her, said. She's one of our ministers. So the time is right. I'm excited about what can happen with this sabbatical time. Not only for myself, but for us together as congregation and pastor. If I could have shown you the entire video of Dr. Wesley's sermon, he says, everybody says to him right after that clip, he says, everybody says, Pastor, what are you going to do on your sabbatical? And then he goes on and kind of details out some of that. But so what am I going to do? What am I going to do? I have some personal goals. Some things I want to take care of. Some relationship things. I want to see some family I haven't seen in years and connect with them. Right? I have some personal health goals and physical goals that I want to attain to. Y'all know that I love cycling, and I love to do that. I'm hoping to take a little bit of time and do some of that because that's refreshing and refueling to me and my spirit. And I have some professional goals. I've got some reading to catch up on that I need to do. I've got some pastors I need to go visit and listen to and see what they're doing that's exciting and innovative and bringing people closer to God. And what they're doing to be closer to God themselves. So I've got some personal goals and professional and spiritual goals along the way. So what are you going to do? That's the question. What are you all going to do? When the cat's away, the mice will play, as they say, right? What are you all going to do? Well, what you're going to do is you're going to come to worship on Sunday morning. And you're going to hear Kelly preach, and you're going to hear Reverend Scott Woolridge preach, and you're going to hear Reverend Ed Taylor preach, and maybe another preacher along that way. You're going to get good words from God and be in the fellowship of Central Christian Church. You're going to give as you've been giving all along. Shoot, you may increase your giving because I'm not in the pulpit. Who knows? That's okay too. You're going to do what you do as church. And we're going to invite you to be a part of a study and spiritual growth series called The Walk. Well, that's me. You don't want me. That's just 30 years of ministry or ministry here, but you've seen that before. We're going to invite you to be part of The Walk, which is a new study by Adam Hamilton that looks at 5 essential spiritual practices in the Christian life. And I'm going to study it with you. Just not with you. I'm going to study it during that 45 days. And I'm inviting you to do the same as a congregation. We're going to be looking for a couple small group leaders. I invite you to do this through Eastertide. That's pretty much what my sabbatical is, Eastertide. Through that time, to study and to be closer to God. Renew, refresh, refocus, and be ready. Because when I come back on June 7th, I'm going to be wearing sneakers, folks. And we're going to be ready to move. We got lots of great things to be and to do that God's calling us yet to be and to do. And so, just as Pastor Wesley said, I'm not leaving. This is just intermission, baby. This is just a chance for us to refocus and renew and do even greater things to the glory of God as Central Christian Church. So my message for you today is that God wants you to resist the temptation. God wants us to resist the temptation to be all and to do all, to do it all ourselves. Our Lenten series, Renewal, invites us to resist that temptation and to surrender. Surrender to our utter dependence upon God. To fully know that we are nothing without God, and that God is the source of our life, our being, sustainer of all that we are and hope to be. There you go. You have permission. You don't have to do it all by yourself. And neither do I. Amen.
Amen.